So, oh, good, recording, okay. So when Marion said, hey, we need you to jump in here, I was like, there's only one thing I can speak to without having to do a deep dive of preparation, and that is this. This has been a growth area for me in my own learning and my own ministry. Am I a neuroscientist? No, I am not. But have I been studying it for several years now? Yes, I have. And particularly understanding the intersection between our spirituality and the neurobiology of our mind, our nervous system, how it all works together, and how does that affect our choices in our spiritual life. So my first question for you is, when you find yourself in crisis or a high stress situation of any kind, what do you normally do to calm yourself down? Let's just throw some things out. Breathe, okay. Water? Who said that? Walk, excellent. Aha, aha. Ooh, we're going to talk about that. Hold on to that thought. Prayer. Okay, so mantra, good. Yep. Eat. It's adaptive. It's adaptive. Yes, okay, I get it. What else? You're hitting several birds with that stone, aren't you? Call a friend, processing, right? Okay. Yeah, I mean, these are pretty typical. It's what we do. I'm going to be introducing some things to you today that have to do with both somatic approaches to how we connect our bodies and our minds. Yes, Ellen. Thank you for asking, Ellen. The word somatic has to do with the soma, the body, but that we approach ourselves as whole beings. We tend to live from the head up, right? We think through things, we learn, we challenge, we love to live from here up because it's where we feel we have the most control. And we tend to neglect how our bodies are involved in everything that's going on multiple levels. We'll talk about all of that in a minute. So what we're going to be doing is going back and forth between head and body today. So I'm hoping that as you come away today, maybe you'll learn a couple of new things that you didn't know about before. Some of it may seem a little woo-woo to you, but I trust you, it's neuroscience. Okay, so here we go. How effective are your efforts and methods, the ones that you just named? Do they work for you? Yeah, usually, yeah. It's a start, thank you. Because there are additional things. I'm not going to say better, because you know what works for you best, right? You know what you feel the most comfortable leaning into. So how do we approach what we know about the mind and emotions, our body, and our spiritual connection? Where we tend to feel the most control is where we tend to hang out, right? And that depends on different people. How can we incorporate practices that help us to be able to honor all of this and to respond versus react? In order to do that, though, we have to have some kind of homeostasis, some kind of balance. Why is crisis and our response versus reaction complex? Because we know that we carry conscious and unconscious thoughts, right? And experiences. They are stored in our brain, right? In our bodies, some scientists will say. Scientists and psychologists who study the realities of the mind know that traumatic, literal trauma, and we'll talk about what that means, or painful experiences, they create neural pathways in the brain that are deeply ingrained and stored in our unconscious reactions. In other words, if you've had a really bad experience that you have survived, and anything that shows up that reminds you of it or looks like it might be like that, your mind is going to default to the protective groove that is already there. It's going to associate with that. Now, by the way, I'm not a licensed therapist. but I know just enough to be dangerous. So, and we all can, right? Learning is not about credentialing. Yes, ma'am.
Knowing is very important knowledge.
Yes, yes.
And
We're going to be
that's
getting,
what I'm seeing is, I mean, you say I'm not a licensed therapist.
Right.
But you know.
I know.
mean, you've experienced it, so that's
I have, and I've been studying in a lot of different lanes. So, you know, I trust myself. Let's start there. How's that? Can we identify any crises that are happening in our lives right now? We've heard about some. We're painfully aware of others, right? But this is about how do we live in that? How do we deal with that? If we live in a perpetual state of focusing on threat, either real or perceived, then we create a chronic state of trauma response in which we were never built to live, right? We call that, some people call it being triggered. Some people call it being activated. I'll say upregulated at times. That means our nervous system has kicked in to look how to protect us, to be aware. From anxiety all the way to real trauma, threats are real in our daily lives. And we can't look at it all at once. So anybody heard of Bessel van der Kolk? Yeah, we love him. He is an amazing, he's a trauma expert. He worked with, started working in research with soldiers with PTSD. And he started studying the mind-body connection of the trauma response and what happens in the brain. And he wrote a book called The Body Keeps the Score: Brain, Mind, and Body in the Healing of Trauma. And I promise you, if you read one of his books, if you can stay awake through this kind of nerdy stuff, which I love, then you will learn a lot. It's absolutely fascinating. I listen to him on Audible. And he says, and I'm quoting him, while we all want to move beyond trauma, the part of our brain that is devoted to ensuring our survival, the amygdala, right? Deep below our rational brain is not very good at denial. Long after a traumatic experience is over, it may be reactivated at the slightest hint of danger and mobilized to stir with brain circuits, secrete massive amounts of stress hormones. This precipitates unpleasant emotions, intense physical sensations, and impulsive and aggressive actions. That can be everything from an honest trauma response. Hang on, I see your brain's going over there. But it also means that if something is similar that may have happened, I don't know, say 15 years ago, we tend to want to default back to what happened then. And how does that color what's happening now? Are they the same? Our brain is telling us it is, but we have choice here. Okay, yes, what were we going to say?
Well, I was just gonna say, it's based on the concept that, fear causes fight, flight.
I'm getting there.
Fear. Okay, sorry.
So that's what, talking about the trauma response, right? So, yeah. I'm happy to. Yeah, I'll just send them out after. And I have a handout for you to take with you, but that's nothing but spiritual practice. We're not gonna look at it right now. So the whole point of a trauma response is that we've all heard about fight, flight, freeze, fawn. There's another one, it's called flop, which is like, couldn't they come up with a better F word to keep the alliteration? But flop has to do with just falling to the ground, playing dead because you can't function, right? But the amygdala, which is part of our sympathetic nervous system, right, that's the thing that kicks in when we see threat. Its entire job is brilliant. It is protective. It is to bring our body and our mind into heightened focus and energy to be able to respond to a threat in front of us. It's wonderful, but we're not meant to live there all the time. So how we are constantly putting ourselves in a position where our focus is on threat, it depletes us, it exhausts us, and it overwhelms our brains, and it keeps us in this heightened dysregulated state of our nervous system. So you've all heard about this kind of stuff, right? Okay, dysregulation, it's a very big word right now. Okay, so the amygdala is activated. It dumps hormones into our system, and our nervous system is highly activated. There's a key word. This part of our nervous system is geared towards protection, not problem solving. So all it does is make you go, okay, I'm ready. But it also hijacks your frontal cortex, the executive functioning in your brain, right? And so you're literally, while you're more prepared in a survival mode, there's not dinosaurs chasing you right now. But what you really need in order to respond is access to your frontal cortex. In order to do that, you've got to have a regulated nervous system. That's what spiritual practice that's when spiritual practice becomes important. How do we get there? All right, so when we're activated or upregulated, we're pumped full of adrenaline, and it is a design that's brilliant. However, when we live in this state, we're not only exhausting our adrenal glands, but we're much less able to respond from a regulated, AKA calm place, mentally. Some people may say rational. I'm going to go, it's way beyond that. You need access to that, but you also need to be able to feel in order to respond holistically, right? We cannot control the fact that we are experiencing a reaction if something happens, but we do have control over our next steps and how we respond to it and what our next choices are. So spirituality is very much about focus and choice. So the spiritual practices are helping us get to this place. All right, what in the world does this have to do with spiritual practice? I just said, when we attend to what is present within us, we look into our responses versus our reactions. We cannot ignore the realities of what our minds and bodies are going through. When they're activated, it's almost impossible to swim upstream against hormones released in a situation with a perceived threat. Our amygdala is hijacked. I've said all this. I'm repeating myself. That's because I get ahead of myself. We know if we're in one of these trauma responses, we're less able to choose well. So we're going to address our bodies and our thoughts in that order. We're going to go back and forth. When we're less equipped to make rational cognitive choices, when our bodies are flooded with reaction hormones. Are you still with me? Nobody's glazed over yet? Okay. I love this nerdy stuff. Love it. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of this, but this is the parasympathetic nervous system. Its job is to keep us regulated, help us go back and forth between being activated and being calm, right? Most of the time, people will use stretching, movements, calm music, meditation, prayer, similar activities. It does help, but there are other additional things that we can do if that's not really working for you. Okay, let's talk about the vagus nerve. Anybody familiar with the vagus nerve? Okay, good, lots of people. I'm going to skip this for a second. Your vagus nerve plays a powerful role in your body. Look where it is. It runs all the way up through back, connecting to your brain, obviously. It keeps the balance to help you more effectively respond in a variety of physiological situations. I got to go back. So stress, chronic stress, and trauma can impact its ability to respond going back and forth. If you have been living with chronic stress, what do you feel? Call it out. Fatigue. Yes, what else? Exhaustion, right? Edgy. Yeah, anxiety. Right. So we're still living in this residual state of we can't get back to middle, back to calm, homeostasis, I'll call it, right? You can look that up if you don't know it. Thank you, State, exactly. So there's a reason why a lot has been focused on the vagus nerve. Because of where it's located, you can see that things that involve vibration and other things like breathing. We're talking about breathing. We're going to talk about that more in a minute. So I'm going to go into some kinds of practices. Now, you may not think of these as spiritual practice, but anything that brings us to a place of calm and centeredness is affecting our spiritual practice, is affecting us spiritually in our choices. So obviously meditation and deep breathing, specifically diaphragmatic breathing, slows the heart rate down and everything, but it's, even though our breathing is part of our autonomic system, right? We don't have to think about it. It's one of the few ways where we can override and step in. And by using our diaphragm, we are stimulating the vagus nerve. We're calming our nervous system and helping to bring the body back into level, right? Into the middle. Exercise, it's no surprise that exercise relieves stress, but HIIT workouts, high intensity interval training, those specifically, and endurance training, increase your vagus nerve activity. The vagus nerve, you want it to be in good shape. When it's exhausted, or if it's not used, we're really good at avoiding things too, aren't we? Let's stop for Let's stop for a second and talk about what are the things that we do trying to calm ourselves that are not necessarily effective, even if we're invested in them. I'll go first. Denial, yeah. I'll say trash TV, scrolling on your phone, drinking, eating. Keep them coming.
Triangulating.
Ooh. Right, exactly. So there are a lot of things that we do trying to be adaptive, trying to deal with it, that are not as effective as turning towards it. Denial, you said. We love to ignore, right? I'm going to put it away. Now, there are times we need to choose when we've been outputting, we've been focusing a lot on things, unplug and refill, but refill things that are actually helpful and good for you. Okay. Massage. Now, that's not as easy to go to and it's expensive. Oh my gosh, it's gone up. Is there a tariff on massage? I don't know. I'm confused about it. Anyway, but therapeutic touch, including reflexology, can increase vagal tone and decrease blood pressure. Hugs, pressure. There's a lot of information around kids that are on the spectrum and they need physical pressure in order for them to be able to calm their nervous systems, right? It works for adults. Okay, so the autonomic nervous system includes the body's signals to the brain. And these signals are 80% afferent, meaning they come through our sensory organs and send information to the brain about perceived or actual threat. Okay, when we think about that, our body's collecting information, are what we call our instincts, our eyes, are things that we perceive that make us a little high. All you have to do is drive in Dallas to know that this is true, right? Your whole body is responding to what's happening around you. So these signals can be interrupted and redirected with somatic focused exercises, in the body exercises. So we're not starting from the brain, we're starting from the body. How am I doing on time? Okay, good. Good. So these exercises both stimulate the vagus nerve and redirect the body to a more regulated state. They can be physically initiated or cognitively. Go back and forth. But I challenge you to spend more time in the body because that's not where we usually go, right? Humming, chanting, singing. You talked about thinking hymns, right? Chanting and singing, there's a reason why chanting meditation has such a calming effect because it's the humming, the sound is stimulating the vagus nerve and the breathing and the focus. So whenever you're chanting or like doing a breath prayer, we're going to do a breath prayer at the end here. When you're doing a breath prayer, you're not only stimulating the body and refocusing it, but you're also introducing a point of focus in your thought. This is how that works. When you sing hymns, or when you're thinking hymns, you've got that in your brain. If you're humming hymns, you're getting the benefit of both, right? Isn't it interesting? Real quick, let's just stop for a second. I want everybody to, we're going to get a low pitch, and I want you to hum the doxology with me. Put your hand on your chest. I'm not warmed up. Go to your diaphragm. Now the words were going in your head, weren't they? So that you're focusing mentally, but you're also stimulating your body to respond. So that's a good example of how that works. I always used to say that singing is like getting a massage from the inside out, right? There's a reason for that. The presence focus. This is a very popular grounding exercise, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm sure you've heard about this. It's a technique of focusing on engaging your senses to the present moment, to the here and now, not anywhere else. You focus on 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. What happens is that this interrupts overwhelming thoughts and emotions by redirecting your focus to the present. This is very popular, and they use it a lot with kids, teaching kids how to become in the moment and regulate. Progressive muscle relaxation. I kind of love this one because you can do it anywhere. This is squeezing all the muscles in your body with a deep breath in and releasing with a hard breath out. So sitting where you are, sitting right now, just tense every muscle in your body that you can and take a deep breath in. And then release the tension and breathe out hard. Did you get a little head rush? I did. Let's do it again a couple of times. Squeeze. Another thing that you can do is press into a wall or a chair or anything that is engaging your body into tension and release. That's really effective, and it refocuses your mind into the present. Okay. EMDR. Who knows about EMDR? Anybody heard of that? This is a fascinating thing, and Bessel van der Kolk talks a lot about this, the eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. How they figured this out, I have no idea, but it's incredibly interesting, and it works. And it starts with having the sides of the brain, both sides of the brain, talk to each other with eye movement. It's like when you're sleeping, your eyes are moving, right? Your brain is processing. Well, you can do this awake. And part of this is helping people to connect to parts of themselves in trauma, in true trauma, that maybe they're out of touch with. And of course, it goes along with talk therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy and stuff like that. But another thing that I have realized is that bilateral stimulation, any of you guys heard about that? If you go on TikTok and just put bilateral stimulation, you'll get 100 things that are talking about it. So you'll hold your phone under your chin and the sound goes back and forth. And it literally forces, with your eyes shut, it forces your eye movement to go with the sound. What's interesting about that is it's doing this same thing and helping it bring your brain into total communication. I also realized that anybody ever been to a sound bath or singing bowls, sound healing? I finally recognized the other day that, oh my gosh, it's doing bilateral stimulation because the sound waves are doing the exact same thing. So this is real. It sounds very nerdy, but I challenge you to go look into it. EMDR. Yes, ma'am. Right. And see, that's the thing. It's like when there's vibration, somatic therapies will work when cognitive originated therapies don't. right? This is proof of that we are whole and they talk to each other. Tapping therapy. This may get real woo-woo for some of y'all. Emotional freedom technique or tapping is simply, this has been around for years. And this is because this is both focus oriented and somatic oriented. One of the things, and it's usually combined with some sort of statement about safety that you say, I am safe, I'm here in my body. You go to the side here. Yeah, you obviously know what I'm talking about. Again, kids use this a lot, especially kids that maybe have behavioral or they're somewhere on the autism spectrum and their self-regulation is not good. One of the things that I love, and I can't do it because of my microphones, is there's one thing for grief, and it's called a butterfly tapping, right? You're tap, Ellen, can you show them? Yeah, this is, what do you think that's doing? Activating the vagus nerve and crossing your brain. And what else? What did your mom do to you when you were a baby? It's like rocking yourself, right? And it hits all, thank you, Ellen. It hits all of those things. Yeah, you're breathing more. And so as you relax, all of the weighted blankets and toys and things like that are simulating a hug because your body needs that pressure for safety. Think about that. Isn't that interesting? Okay, so tapping is another one. And by the way, the handout I'm going to give you doesn't have a lot of this stuff, but I'll send you the PowerPoint. Getting into nature. This is obvious for most of us, right? There is so much literature about why getting into nature helps regulate us and calm us, both our focus and all of the sensory input that we have. And if you're hiking, your breathing is going to help that too, help regulate things. And it helps to stimulate and support the parasympathetic nervous system. I think when I think of sympathetic versus parasympathetic nervous system is, I got to go do something, right? It sends you into readiness and ready for fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Whereas the parasympathetic, I think of parachuting. I'm coming, we're coming to save the day, it's going to be okay. That may be silly, but it helps me understand how it all works together. Getting into nature almost always will bring you to the next practice of gratitude, right? Just recognizing in meditation or prayer or journaling or focusing on those things for which you are grateful reduces stress and reframes your sense of safety and provision. Now it's really connecting to our faith, isn't it? Right? To our spiritual practice, gratitude. And I'm not talking about toxic positivity. We can hold both things at once. That's really important. Anything that you're going through that's hard, anything that you feel, you get to feel anything that you feel. And on a spiritual level, I believe that is the invitation of the holy. Come as you are, exactly as you are. Let me be with you where you are. Prayer, talking to God about concerns, not only serves as verbal processing. Who said that? Talking about calling a friend. Yeah. Verbal processing is really important. How many of you, I'm talking to introverts now, how many of you think to talk? Think to talk. How many of you talk to think it through? I'm a verbal processor. I need somebody present to talk it through because it helps organize what I think, right? Focusing on anything that moves from identifying threat to solutions and reasons to feel safe can be a spiritual practice because it aligns us with the knowledge of God with us. But we can't just stay up in our heads because that's not enough. Just a little, this is a small survey. How many of you, when you've been super upregulated or really upset about something, has ever responded well to somebody saying, now just calm down? Why doesn't that work? Because you're in it. That's not helpful. You can tell your own brain, all right, now calm down, calm down. But is that enough? Rarely. And why? because we live from here up so often, right? Yes, ma'am.
You know, the whole thing about these spiritual practices and this woo-woo stuff and blah, 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 blah. You know, we're in the Church of the West and we are not oriented to what Diane is talking about. The Church of the East, meaning
Hmm.
the schism in 1050.
Yeah.
The Church of the East, which is more meditative, went that direction. We went the other direction as pendulum swing.
Yeah.
And we're kind of coming back to our bodies. And what I want you to think about is that we are not bodies with a soul. We're souls that inhabit
A body. Yep. Yep.
And that's what this is talking about.
Yeah, and you know, people for hundreds and thousands of years, people who are mystics have dove into this and explore it and are comfortable in it. If you've ever done Ignatian practice, it's all about silence, meditation, and it's very focused about who we are as a whole person, right? Like I said, we live from here up, especially as Presbyterians, because we do everything decently and in order. And you can't do that unless your head is in charge, right? There is a woman who, she calls herself Reclaiming Melissa. So I've been looking for her last name to give her proper attribution, but I haven't found it yet. But she said this, and I thought it was really interesting, that our sense of protecting ourselves is always about what can we control, right? But the reality is there's going to be tons of stuff that shows up in our lives over which we have no control. The families that were affected by Kerrville had no control, no control. All that we have control over is how do we respond. But so she says, you never have control, but you always have a choice. You can pause and notice in the present, in this here and now, separated from anything that's happened in the past. The next time you feel out of control, don't try to control it, name it. This is activation. This is a protective response. Anytime you're feeling yourself getting really upset and defensive or feeling like you got to protect yourself, accept what is there in that moment. We're not trying to fix it. We're meeting it where it is. That is a deeply spiritual statement. And it does impact how we live out our spiritual lives. Not what's wrong with me, why am I like this, and how do I make it stop? Name it out loud and then ask, what is the one thing I can choose right now? You don't need control to reclaim your power. You need one moment of choice. My invitation to all of us is that as a congregation, we step into this moment, let go of anything that has gone before, and listen, find our regulation so that we are prepared to respond to what the Holy is bringing to us, to consider who are we choosing to be? How are we choosing to respond in this moment? So here's some of the woo-woo stuff that's ancient, right? Yoga, breath work, connect with nature, massage. I did all my research and they put it in one slide. I was like, what, darn it, where were you? Strengthening mind-body connection, body scanning, progressive muscle relaxation, releasing stored emotions. Oh, there's one I forgot that had to do with the release. Have you ever noticed when children get overwhelmed, they have a tantrum? What do they do with their bodies? They do it without thinking, right? And they're screaming. But then when they release, sometimes, not always, they've actually helped themselves to regulate by having a tantrum. Yes, sir.
I noticed that my wife has stage 4 Alzheimer's.
Okay,
And the best thing that advice I heard was you just have to meet them where they're at.
exactly.
Because I was trying for so many years to correct her.
Yeah. And it's hurtful.
And it's hurtful. So
Yeah.
it took me a long time to learn, but you just have to meet them where they're at.
And oh, by the way, we talk about this in grief work. When you're with somebody who's grieving or yourself, nobody likes to be met with sympathy. Oh, I'm so sorry that you're going through this. Because that's distancing. That's like your experience is over here and I'm over here and I'm protecting myself from your pain. Right? But when we choose to respond with empathy and lean in with curiosity and reflect what they're going through, that must feel very confusing. I'm right here. Tell me in this moment what you're thinking, if they can access that. I mean, that's specific to Alzheimer's, but there's a whole lot of helpful information there. But leaning in, whoever felt better by somebody throwing spaghetti on the wall of their sympathy, if somebody leans in rather than trying to protect yourself and meeting them where they are, that's the comfort. That's the beginning of healing. That reduces the isolation of the grief, right? Very few of us have that capacity or skill. It's a choice and a skill. You don't have to feel comfortable. You just have to show up and be present. It's very connected. How do you get to this homeostasis where your nervous system, you're calm enough where you can respond and be in the moment without having to react? Reactivity is protection, right? Let me stop talking. What time is it?
10:17.
Okay. Let's do some Q&A real quick. See what because I do want us to end with a practice. Any questions? Did I nerd out too much with y'all? It's so important, isn't it? And I really believe that our spiritual growth is connected to all of these things, seeing our entire self as holistic and welcoming it, even if it's uncomfortable and unusual.
Say, as a church, that is in which individuals are doing this kind of work, and
Mhm.
it's a culture. Which
Yes.
is what we've begun to develop over the last decade or so.
Mm-hmm.
It makes a body of Christ that is self-differentiated in a that is not part of the stream that we're in, is not part of the water that we're in. We are who we are. We understand ourselves. We're willing to be with you without judgment. I mean, that's a window of
Culture.
Christ to,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, think about that. What was Jesus doing? He was bringing the kingdom of God to earth to bring that culture of love and acceptance and welcome. Yes, ma'am.
I also think, and ties to kind of what you had said too earlier, Ellen, is there's talk of, the 500 years, the change of the church. And I think a lot of this is a focus to what is happening in the great body of the church and how it's setting us to understand the beautiful gift that we were given by God, this body, and how it was meant to feel and everything was to be used, not just here.
Not just the head. Yeah.
And I feel like as it's evolving, as the church is in this whirlwind, so to speak,
Mhm.
this is what is coming out in a lot of the youth and a lot of
Mhm.
what's going around, and it gives another viewpoint of the spiritual.
Well, and I for years have been a firm believer that all truth, all capital T truth, is cohesive. It supports itself. And the more we learn through neuroscience, through psychology, through medicine, of how we are built and how does that work together, that is directly impacted. Who are we spiritually? How do we show up? And how are we able to respond in the moment? Okay. Let's do, we're going to do a breath prayer. And I'm sure you all are aware of like deep breathing, right? But we're going to do a box prayer. Box prayer, and it's not really a box, it's a parallelogram. But because we're going to breathe in for the count of 8 and we're going to hold it for 4 counts. And then we're going to breathe out longer and then hold at the bottom of the cycle and go in and breathe in again. So it's longer than your normal breath. Well, when I say 8, that doesn't mean 1, 2. Don't worry. You get to breathe at your own pace. But what I want you to do is breathe deeper than normal. In fact, when you get to the top of your breath, take an extra sip. See if you can fill it all. And as you're breathing out, squeeze out the air all the way to the bottom. Now, when we do this, you choose on your inner breath, what is something that you need to hold? God, take my anxiety all the way in, and then help me release it into your hands. I don't care what you say, it's up to you and God. But we're going to do this for 5 minutes, and I want you to focus on the intensity of your breath in and out, and what is it that you bring today that you want to ask God to help you with. So let's start with just closing your eyes. Get your feet on the floor because, you really do have to be balanced in order to breathe deeply. Sit up straight. If you're slumped, your diaphragm's not going to work, right? Unfold your arms. Maybe rest your hands, your wrist on your legs or on the table. All right, we're going to breathe in, deep breath. Hold. Breathe out. Make sound. Hold at the bottom. Breathe in. I'm doing my pace. You do yours. When you're ready, introduce your thought on the intake and your thought on the breath out. Squeeze both up and out. And we're going to do this for 5 minutes. Don't be afraid of making sound with your breath. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Nobody cares what your sound is. One more minute. As we do our last few cycles of breath, I want you to put your hand on your diaphragm. As you breathe in, take that sip at the top and hold it. And then really squeeze from your diaphragm all the way out. When you're ready, let your breathing return to normal. And slowly, slowly open your eyes. Let's pray together. Faithful God, you are not surprised by anything that life throws at us. You know all of our concerns. You know our joys. You are with us in every moment. God, help us to listen to the invitation of your Spirit to come to the center, to step into your place of calm, to refocus on trusting in your faithfulness, your provision, your love, your grace. And help us all to respond as a community to help each other to find that place of stillness in the present moment as we move forward in these days and months to come. Thank you for your love. Thank you for every soul in this room, in this church. We ask in your beloved Son's name. Amen. And friends, I've got a handout for you to take with you. It's a little bit different than what we talked about, but I'll also send the PowerPoint. Thank you for letting me be with you today. Thank you. Thank you.